Lyme and chronic illness community. Just a Sunday afternoon here. Got my truck loaded up and going for a ride on my dirt bike in a nearby park. Got inspired to start a vlog series. Not really sure how long I'm gonna make it yet, but just based off of some other people's advice, to just kind of share my recovery back from Lyme disease, chronic Lyme disease. And although I'm not 100% there, I mean, I'm obviously doing pretty good. I'm able to get out and do some stuff, and it was a long road. And I know for anybody out there, we're all searching for answers and trying to figure out how to beat this thing, and some people are in incredibly bad shape and just really need any kind of relief they can get. So hopefully what I'll end up sharing in these vlog series might be of some help to you. To just kind of start at the beginning of my story. I first started noticing symptoms probably as early as 2011, and it was mostly in my mood. And I don't know if this was related to Lyme or not, but it just wasn't characteristic of me, of my personality. But just kind of noticed that I started getting more and more antisocial, and more and more irritable. I just seemed to be more annoyed by things that would never annoy me. I seemed to be having a harder time falling asleep at night. Really, it was just getting to sleep. Once I was asleep, I would stay asleep. But I had a hard time falling asleep, and I could wake up very easily, actually. I mean, the slightest noise would wake me up. And at that point in time, I actually had switched from sports. I had raced motocross for a really long time, for 11 years, and got out of that and started getting into cycling. And I had moved from my hometown in Massachusetts to Connecticut, near New London, which is right near Lyme, Connecticut, go figure, for a job. It was my first job right out of college. And since I got into the mountain bike scene, was racing mountain bikes and stuff, and was trail running a lot, I was in the woods all the time, and I would never check myself for ticks. So it's very likely that in that period of time that I was living over there, that I got bit probably multiple times. I never checked myself for ticks. And the reason being is because I never heard of anybody having a problem with Lyme disease for an extended period of time. I had friends that had gotten Lyme disease and were able to get over it somewhat quickly. I did have one friend that had to go on IV antibiotics, but he had discovered that he had Lyme disease probably within a couple weeks to a couple months of a tick bite. So in my mind, it just wasn't that big of a deal. And basically what ended up happening is from 2011 to 2013, I was kind of okay. I mean, I would say I was 90% healthy, I'll say, and the only 10% was just in my mood. You know, like me being irritable, me not sleeping well. But other than that, I was physically very strong. I was cycling around 200 miles per week with a lot of intensity built into that. I was an elite level athlete, and my diet was extremely clean. So I was trying to do all the things correct to keep my health in a good spot. I do remember in 2012, though, I had this period of a couple weeks where like this strange wave of fatigue came over me. And I remember I was out on a training ride, and my legs just kind of locked up, almost like I was hitting a wall and just bonking, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was a really weird feeling. It was like my muscle fibers were just seizing up, almost as if I was dehydrated, but I wasn't. And I remember it just taking forever to get back home, and after that it was just kind of like really fatigued and sick feeling for a couple of weeks. And I was working with a coach at the time, so I felt like there's no way that I've overtrained. There's no way this is overtraining, because I know he would have picked up on that, and I know he would have prevented me from doing that. But you know, I ended up seeing a doctor after a couple weeks, and the doctor actually asked me if it was just advice. I'm like, well, maybe it is all that. Maybe I'm just being crazy and everything's fine and there's nothing wrong with me. And so, after a couple weeks, I did start feeling a little better. I just stopped riding my bicycle altogether to let my body recover, and kind of picked up dirt biking again a little bit, just doing like some trail riding because it wasn't as demanding on my body. And I was able to bounce back. And I think for the rest of that year, I was fine for the most part, still having the same kind of like antisocial behavior, I'll say. I was still going out and partying and stuff, but I just remember like being in my office at work and just kind of almost irritated every time somebody asked me a question or anything. I was just so always in my head, and I just didn't want to be bothered, which is really weird because it's not normally how I am. So I went through the winter 2012, did some great training on the bike. 2013 rolled around. Also had some really great training, was progressing really quickly, way better than I did in 2012. And I was just training myself at this point. I wasn't working with a coach anymore. And I ended up having probably the most progressive season of my life in any sport that I've ever competed in 2013. And another significant part about 2013 was I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And I was just enjoying the scene out here. I always liked California. I just wanted to be in warmer weather and just see where the cycling thing took me. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to make a living doing it, but I just had some aspirations to compete in a couple of pro events, and I wanted to be in an environment that allowed me to train year-round and not have to be inside on a trainer for hours on end. And ultimately, it was just more conducive to the hobbies that I had. I mean, I love to hike. I could ride a bicycle for days. I just love riding bicycles. It is definitely my love and my passion. And, I was living the life for the first 7 months that I was out here. And it was amazing. And then come December, I was definitely overtraining. I kind of didn't give myself a long enough break, a long enough off season to let my body heal from the 2013 racing season. And part of that was driven by my goals to compete in a major race the following year. And I knew where my metrics needed to be, and it was somewhat realistic for me, but it forced me to keep on training hard and not really give myself the break that I needed. And as a result, I ended up getting the flu in October. I recovered from that. I did bounce back from that, started training again. Still didn't back it off enough. And come the end of December, I got a cold. Just like a little head cold, and it didn't go away. And things kept getting worse and worse by the week. And by week 3, I finally went to a doctor, had a whole battery of tests done, couldn't figure out anything was wrong. I gave it another couple of weeks, kept getting worse, went back to him, we couldn't figure out what was wrong, started seeing every different type of the doctor in the book, and basically kept seeing doctors and kept getting tests done for what I'll say probably the next 6 months. So starting from January of 2014 to June of 2014, I think I saw 2 immunologists, 2 infectious disease specialists, 2 endocrinologists. One of them was a private one up at University of San Francisco. It was really good, but couldn't find anything wrong, even though it looked like it was something probably related to like an adrenal fatigue or something, some kind of adrenal syndrome. Couldn't find anything. And I just, through my research, eventually got the idea that I'm like, well, given my history on the East Coast and the sports I'm in, the probability of me getting bit by a tick was probably really high. And of course, the first Lyme disease test that I had got came back negative. Everything was negative across the board. And then I researched it some more and found out how many people were sick with Lyme disease and tested negative on your standard run-of-the-mill Western blots or ELISAs, and ended up getting tested by IGeneX. And I got tested for Lyme disease and got a full co-infection panel done. And what was interesting was that that panel, the co-infection panel, came back positive for just about everything. but my Lyme disease test still was coming back negative. And I ended up finding a Lyme literate doctor in San Francisco and talked to him about it. And he was like, well, you know, given all these co-infections that you have, it's likely that you were bit multiple times. And he's like, you definitely had to have had Lyme disease at some point, if not still having it. But your body's probably so beat down from, you know, just having all the other infections there, you're not producing antibodies to Lyme disease. And in my mind, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I kind of have like a scientific mindset. I was just skeptical about everything that I was hearing and seeing, and I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. How does a person go from being completely healthy to all of a sudden having like these 7 different infections that need to be taken care of? And it was really hard for me to wrap my mind around that. And his treatment approach was to go after each co-infection individually before treating Lyme. And so the first co-infection we started to treat was Bartonella, and I think I started on ciprofloxacin. And after being on that for 3 months, I wanted to get tested through IGeneX again, just to see what my antibody levels look like. Because to me, I'm like, who's to say that, you know, a lot of people in this world are walking around with tons of different infections and are just asymptomatic. Like, we all harbor bacteria, and our bodies are kind of just found in equilibrium with them, and they've kind of become part of our microbiome. But lo and behold, after I got tested after a couple months of being on the Cipro, my antibody levels, I believe, dropped from a 260 down to an 80. And then I eventually, another couple months later, I started showing up negative for it altogether. So in my mind, it kind of made those tests more legitimate and valid. But what happened as we kept working through each co-infection is that I noticed I wasn't feeling any better at all. So then I went back to the same mindset. Oh, well, you know, who's to say that I wasn't walking around with this stuff and was perfectly fine, and that, you know, the major culprit here is not being addressed. We're addressing all this other crap that's really not doing anything to me. And the thing that's hurting me the most is going unaddressed. And I eventually ended up parting ways with that doctor because I just didn't agree with his treatment approach. I didn't like being on all those antibiotics and not seeing results that were improving my health. So I found another doctor in my area. She was more on board with the treatment approach that I wanted to take and really understood and heard my concerns. And to kind of put a time period on that, I think I started seeing Dr. A fall of 2014, stayed with him till the beginning of 2015, switched to this other doctor in 2015, and it wasn't until that time in 2015 that I started doing work with this other doctor that I started to see results, and things started to get better for me and turn around. And she believed that, you know, you could take a kill 2 birds with 1 stone approach and treat Lyme disease and co-infections at the same time. And it was working for me, you know, and I would say by about June of 2015, I started to be able to exercise a little bit, just a little bit. A little bit of stuff here and there on a bicycle. I mean, what I've come to find is that any kind of cardio exercise really hurts my immune system. It seems to hurt it more than doing anaerobic stuff like weightlifting or even riding my dirt bike. I mean, dirt bike riding really is just a series of anaerobic functions all strung together with micro recoveries in between. And I think that's the reason why doing that doesn't hurt me as bad as, you know, going on a 20 or 30 minute bicycle ride at a very easy pace. But nevertheless, I continued to progress slowly throughout that year and kind of into 2016, but I relapsed a little bit in 2015. And I'd say overall, I'm now at about 60-65% better. For some other people on the outside looking in, they would look at my life and see where I'm at right now. I'm like, exercising about 3 times a week, work full time. Sometimes I'm working, can work 50 to 60 hours a week. I have a social life. I can do chores around the house, but I still have my crashes. I have my fatigue crashes. I need days where I'm not doing anything at all and I'm fully relaxing. But in future vlogs, I'll probably get more into the specifics of each disease that I have, what I use to treat those diseases, and my specific approach to Lyme disease. I'm sure, as many of you know, different things work for different people, and what I'm sharing is not to say like that's what you should do and that's the path for you. It's just to let you know what worked for me. So other than that, hope you guys are enjoying your weekend, and until next time, keep it easy and rest up.